Ladies and gentlemen, podcasting since 2005. You're listening to Gamertag Radio with your hosts, podcaster Hall of Famer Danny Pena, the always opinionated Parris Lilly, and from outside of the norm, Peter Toledo. This is Gamertag Radio.
Hey everyone, this is Parris, and as you know, I have had in my possession the Xbox Series X for a few weeks now, and I have a lot of questions about the actual architecture and hardware of the Xbox Series X and S. So who better to talk about this than Jason Ronald from Xbox? Thank you for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me, Parris. Excited to be here and talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I've watched many interview with you over the past few months, and I've seen a lot of interactions with you on Twitter. Now, one thing I wanted to get crystal clear, and I'd let you answer it instead of me butchering it. What is your official title at Xbox?
Sure, that's a great question. My official role is I'm the Director of Program Management for the Xbox platform team. And as part of that role, I'm leading development of our next generation consoles, the Xbox Series X and S.
Nice, Bryce, because I would have completely butchered that. So thank you for doing that. So let's just jump right into it. Let's talk about this. So like I said, I've had the Xbox Series X in my possession for a few weeks now. I've gone through the preview program, played games, like Dirt 5, Yakuza, done some backwards compatibility things, Gears 5, things like that. Like Batman Arkham Knight is one I've spent a lot of time with as well. So I'm a bigger PC gamer guy. That's kind of my thing. I love to build my own high-end gaming PCs and do things like that. But since I sat in that audience at the Game Awards back in December and officially they unveiled the Series X and we started to learn more about the actual architecture and everything that makes it click, I've really wanted to talk to you directly because I have so many questions about the design and just the architecture of creating this console. So my first question right off the top, can you explain a little more about the velocity architecture that you have in the Series X and S?
Sure, it's a great question. So one of the things that we did very early on when we started looking at our next generation program and what would be included in our next generation consoles, we really spent a lot of time with developers to really understand what they were looking for in a next generation console and the kinds of things where maybe the technology was actually getting in the way of kind of their creative visions or the kinds of games that they wanted to build. And two pieces of feedback that we got very clearly from almost all developers is they were looking for a massive increase in CPU performance, as well as kind of a reinvention of the I/O subsystem. Because, in many games today, you might be playing, let's say, an open world game, and maybe you have really long load times. And that really breaks that immersion for the player. Or, maybe they're going to have to funnel you down like a tunnel or an elevator, and it's really kind of constraining that game design. So as we really looked at it, we evaluated different kinds of technology that we could leverage. And what we realized is we really need to kind of revolutionize how the I/O subsystem works. And the foundation of that is the custom NVMe SSD that is included in the Xbox Velocity architecture. And that's really the foundation. And really that delivers I/O performance unlike anything that we've ever seen in consoles before, with more than 40 times the performance. But beyond the custom NVMe SSD, we had to add additional things like custom hardware decompression blocks so that we can actually decompress assets off of the SSD in real time without using any CPU resources. We also looked at the APIs that developers use. A lot of the file APIs were written more than 30 years ago. And when you really look at the kinds of workloads that you can put on an SSD, that is not that dissimilar from some of the workloads that you put on a GPU, as an example. And then as we bring all of those things together, that opened up new opportunities, things like quick resume, which is something that we can do at the system level, or a new GPU feature that we have called sampler feedback streaming, where the I/O subsystem is so fast that we can actually stream data off of the I/O without putting it directly in memory. So that allows us to do things like go beyond the raw specifications of the hardware. So we're really excited by the Xbox Velocity architecture, and we think it's going to open up a lot of innovation over the entire generation.
Absolutely. And that leads me right into my next question, because that's kind of been the fascinating thing about this for me is, so let's just start here with that custom, I always butcher this, NVMe drive is based off of PCIe 4.0, correct?
Correct.
Right. So this is bringing some unprecedented speeds, not only obviously on the console side, but even on the PC side as well. So with that, you mentioned quick resume, and I want to dive into that a little bit more, but just with these new load times and playing on the Series X, just I've witnessed firsthand, it's amazing. Like, it really makes me not want to go back to playing games on the Xbox One, to be honest with you. But can you talk about that, what this means for future game development by having these speeds? Like, what are developers going to be able to tap into by utilizing this new SSD drive?
Yeah, so like I said, I think first things first, we really want the technology to fade in the background for both developers and gamers. It's really about putting a player in an immersive world where you just want to spend time, have a great time with your friends, be able to experience different experiences. So first and foremost, I think it just really kind of unshackles developers and really allows them to lean into their creative freedom. But I think one of the things that we're already seeing as we're talking about titles coming in like year 2, year 3, is it's causing developers to rethink how they can use the I/O subsystem. Yeah. Because in a lot of cases today, they kind of have to work around those technical barriers. And now, there's entire classes of assets that don't even need to be loaded into memory. So that means they can use the available memory for things like higher resolution textures, more dense environments, more living worlds where, what you do a couple hours ago is persistent and actually there. And then I think also, too, what's really exciting is, with the Xbox Series X and Series S, we're really setting the foundation for the next 7 to 10 years of game development. So, some of the things, like, we're going to invent brand new techniques over the course of the generation. Developers are going to come to us and say, hey, I have this idea. Is this possible? We're going to build new capabilities on top of the hardware platform that we have. So I think for me, that's what's really exciting about the start of a new generation is obviously we're really proud of what we're on track to deliver. We think people are going to have really great experiences on day one, but I can't wait to see the games in year 2 and year 3 and beyond. Because that's really where, developers really fully understand how to take advantage of this and really start to push the boundaries of what's possible.
Completely agree. And I think that's been my first impression, that we're still very in early days. Like, the thing that's going to jump off the screen for most people is, whoa, Gears 5 loads super fast, or Batman loads super fast, or, whatever the game may be, that's going to be the first thing that you see, as a gamer, is just how quickly we're going to be able to load into these games now. But this also leads me to my next question, and that's quick resume, because I just want to make sure people understand it. So for me, being able to play, I've had anywhere between 5 to 6 games that I've been able to just switch back and forth from, and they're loading pretty quickly. But I want to understand how that save state works as far as with the Series X is. So even if I unplug the Series X, quick resume is still going to be available to me. Is that a persistent thing because it just literally lives on the SSD, or is there a point in time where that potentially could go away for games?
Yeah, so the way that Quick Resume is designed, it's a combination of what we have in the hardware with the Xbox Velocity architecture, as well as our unique operating system design, where we actually technically run 3 operating systems in parallel. So the way that it works is that when you switch away from a game, what we're actually able to do is we're able to save the virtual machine state to the SSD. And that's why, to your point, your quick resume states persist for a long period of time. You can even unplug the console, and your quick resume state will actually persist as well. We've had people that have unplugged their console for a couple days or even a couple weeks on end. And when they come back, they're able to instantly resume. And you can also persist your quick resume states through system updates as well. So what we've really designed it for is to get the player into the fun as quickly as possible. Even with all these improvements in load times and all these improvements in CPU performance, our goal is really to get you into the fun as quickly as possible. And I think Quick Resume is a great example of things that we can do at the platform level with this new hardware, with this new software infrastructure that we have. And then obviously developers themselves can also take full advantage of it as well.
Fantastic. Now, I want to talk about auto HDR and some of the backwards compatibilities things that we've seen with the Series X. But if I don't ask this, people are going to kill me. I already know the answer to it, but I'm going to ask it anyways. So you designed the Series X specifically in a certain way as far as just the way it works for dispersing heat and cooling and things like that. Now, there has been talk the past few weeks about the Xbox Series X and its quote unquote heat issues potentially. I wanted to kind of give you a chance to address this as far as it being whether you have it in an entertainment cabinet, whether it's horizontal, vertical. Can you talk about the design of the Series X and what you're doing to keep that unit cool?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, we really designed it with, your living room and the different ways that people use the consoles every single day. And to be honest, I've had these consoles running in my home for close to a year now. I've never experienced any heating issues. The consoles continue to be whisper quiet. So, the console's working exactly as designed. To your point, we are delivering a new level of performance and a new level of power that you've never seen in console gaming before. Of course, with any electronic device, it will output heat, but that's exactly how the console is actually designed. So, we're really happy with the overall performance of it. We've had no reports of heat issues. And then to your point, you've been using the console yourself. We've got hundreds of people out there in the preview program, and we've had no reports of any issues.
Right. So like I have it in my entertainment center and I actually have it horizontal. I would like it to be vertical just for the look of it. And my wife, I've already upset her because I want to get a new entertainment center, but I have it horizontal and, and I've shared a few pictures on social media and I've seen people being concerned about that going, it's in too confined of a space. It's going to overheat. And to your point, I've had it on for multiple hours. And yeah, if I put my hand there, do I feel heat? Absolutely. Am I worried about it overheating? No. I think the way you've designed it, no matter if you stand it up or you lay it on its back, it's been completely fine with those heating issues. Now, this actually leads me into something else because I don't have this hardware. So the Series S, when it comes to design as far as heat, you've obviously taken into account something similar. No matter the way you want to do it, vertical or horizontal, it should be fine in your entertainment cabinet.
Exactly. And in my office here at home, I have a Series S, both horizontal and vertical. I also have Series X's, horizontal and vertical. And the other thing is when we design these consoles, we actually test them in all kinds of different furniture. We go out and we understand what the most popular furniture setups are. We test them in different people's homes and different setups. Overall, we're really, really happy with how both consoles are performing. Both of them are extremely quiet because, once again, like I said before, we want the hardware to fade into the background and just really deliver a new level of performance that you've never seen before and just really keep you immersed in the gaming universes that you love.
Fantastic. Now, Xbox Series S. I want to talk about this a little more directly because I want to talk about just the overall design between the X and the S. So it really dawned on me when you guys released the spec sheet for both consoles. So the S and the X, for all intents and purposes, have the same exact CPU in it, correct?
Yes, it's the exact same architecture, and they're basically the exact same performance.
Right, and this is based on its AMD RDNA 2, if I'm remembering correctly. But I bring up that point because there's obviously been some concern out there about the S potentially holding back games on Xbox. But the way I've tried to simplify it, maybe you can confirm this for me. I look at the Series X as this is my 4K device that can do 60 frames per second. Some games are going to be able to go up to 120 frames per second. And the S is my 1440p, 1080p console that can do 60 frames per second, 120 frames per second on the same games. The S while not having the same level of ray tracing, will have some ray tracing elements in it, similar to the X. But for all intents and purposes, it really comes down to what resolution do I want to play my games at? If I want to play at 4K, I get the X. If I want to play at 1440p or 1080p, I get the S.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly how we designed the consoles. So you're spot on. Our performance target for the Series X was 4K at 60 frames a second with support for up to 120 frames a second. And our design target for the Xbox Series S was 1440p at 60 frames a second with support for up to 120 frames a second. But the reality is all the internal components that are really critically important for developers are the exact same between the two consoles. So the CPU performance is nearly identical. The Xbox Velocity architecture is the exact same between the Series S and the Series X. Even our dedicated audio hardware block is the exact same between Series S and Series X. And then all those next-gen capabilities that we've talked about, things like DirectX ray tracing, mesh shaders, variable rate shading, HDMI 2.1, all of those are the exact same between the two consoles, because as a developer, you want to know that you have those exact same capabilities on both consoles. And then developers already have really good tools and really good capabilities to scale up and down on things like resolution, or if they choose to enable or disable different graphics effects, that's completely within the developer's control. But the things that are more difficult for developers to scale, things like CPU performance or differences in I/O, we made those identical so that developers could guarantee that they're going to be able to deliver that. And I think you can already look at some of the games that you've played as well. Things like Gears 5 with 120 frames a second multiplayer. It works the exact same on both Xbox Series X and Series S. And just recently, the Coalition released some information, and even they said, visually, even at a reduced resolution, the Xbox Series S version looks and plays better than what you can play on Xbox One X. And that just really speaks to how Xbox Series S is a true next-generation console, just targeting a lower resolution and at a much more accessible price point.
Absolutely, because one of my things before all the information finally came out about the S was I was like, just keep your One X. Why are you getting a Series S? I didn't understand it until I saw that CPU, because to me, when I see that CPU and I equate this to my son, he loves Destiny 2, he loves Fortnite. He can now play those games at 1080p, 60 frames per second on the Series S. And it's only $299. I mean, that's how I'm looking at it, because I think while I'm big into 4K, and I know, other people like me love 4K, the majority of people aren't really playing their games at 4K right now. They're still playing at 1080p. They're still playing at 1440p. So you're getting that next gen experience with, like we said, quick resume, faster load times. We're getting ray tracing, like you mentioned the audio, which I was going to bring up. We're getting all that on the S. So that's what I've been trying to tell people, on our shows, that you don't have to go run out and go get the X day one if you don't care about 4K. The S is going to give you that same experience. Now, one other thing I wanted to bring up on that, and then I really want to get into the audio HDR back compat stuff, is storage. So, yes, the internal storage, we know we get all that fantastic speed. Now, we get that external storage with the custom SSD that you can plug in. I've been able to test that as well, and it works great. But two things I want to talk about on that. It is virtually the same experience if you use that custom external SSD, as well as how for all intents and purposes, the old SSD drives, the old USB 3.0 drives that you can plug in, how will those work with the Series X and S, as well, as far as being able to offload your Xbox One games on that external storage, but even these newer games that will take advantage of the new custom SSD, being able to kind of leave those there and move them back and forth to, between drive, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm saying 100 things at once, but if you get what I'm saying when it comes to that.
No, I think I know where you're going. And like you said, one of the big bets that we made with this generation was really leaning into this next generation storage and IO infrastructure. And what was critically important for us is that we had a simple, easy to use way to expand your internal storage on day one. And that's why we partnered with Seagate on the storage expansion card. And that matches the internal performance exactly. And one of the most important things from a developer's perspective is consistent, sustained performance.
Yes.
And that's what we really designed that internal storage as well as the external, the storage expansion card to deliver that consistent, sustained performance so that you won't get momentary hitches or all of a sudden experience like as you're like racing in Forza as an example, all of a sudden you get a hitch during streaming. But at the same time, too, we understand there's a large number of people, myself included, that have, large catalogs of Xbox One, 360, or OG games on an external USB hard drive, whether it's a hard drive or an SSD drive. So you can easily just take that drive from your existing Xbox One console, plug it into your Series X or Series S, and instantly play all of those games directly off of that external storage device. We'll run those games at the peak bandwidth that either that hard drive or the SSD or even the USB connection itself will run. But for new games that are really designed to take full advantage for the Xbox Velocity architecture, we can't provide that exact same performance guarantee to developers because every hard drive, every SSD is slightly different. So for those games have to be run off of either the internal storage or the external storage expansion card. But we've also improved the software itself to make it easy for players. Like maybe you want to, archive a game or move it to an external hard drive for, it's not a game that you're playing currently. You can very quickly and easily transfer that off of an external hard drive onto either the internal drive or into the storage expansion card, and then just get that true next-gen experience that you'd fully expect that the developers counted on.
Yeah, you explained that a lot better than I did. I'm glad you got the point of what I meant, because I guess that's my biggest thing. You mentioned the word archive, and that's how I'm kind of looking at the older USB 3.0 external drives, that it's going to allow you, even these games that do need to take advantage of the new architecture, you can still have them kind of in a ready state and just move them back and forth. Because one of the bigger concerns that feedback we've gotten is, look, these custom SSD drives are not cheap right now. I mean, it's just a fact of the technology. Like even on the PC side, they are not cheap right now. So people will be running out of space if they're trying to have a bunch of games. So I've really tried to, communicate that don't get rid of that current drive that you're already using on your Xbox One. It is still going to come in handy when we go into the next gen. Now, that also brings me to another thing with the Series S when it comes to that, because obviously the S only has, 512, I believe, 512 gigabytes of storage internally on there. Games that you put on that Series S drive will not be, because I think Phil Spencer said this, will not take as much space as they would on the Series X because they're not 4K assets. Is that true?
Yeah, so we provide developers with the capabilities to selectively install certain assets on different consoles. So if you're on an Xbox Series S, you don't necessarily have to install, say, the 4K textures. We also give them the flexibility, for example, let's say you primarily use English as your primary language. Then a developer can choose to not install, say, the French audio assets or cutscenes or whatnot. And then we also have added a feature that allows players, if the developer chooses to support it, to actually uninstall or remove certain portions of the game. And the easiest example of this is, let's say a game has multiplayer and campaign. Well, after you've completed the campaign, if you choose to not play the campaign over and over and over, you could actually install the campaign assets while leaving all of the multiplayer assets on the actual drive, so that way you still have that great gameplay experience. So we've provided capabilities to developers to just be more intelligent about what gets installed, but then we've also given players the flexibility for the developers who choose to implement it to actually be more selective about what gets installed so that you just get the most value out of the available storage that you have.
Fantastic. Glad for the clarification on that. Now, the one thing, because I know we're running out of time here, I wanted to get into backwards compatibility because that's obviously something I've really been taking advantage of during this preview time. So can you kind of talk about how the Series X and the S is going to handle backwards compatible games as far as enabling higher frames, refresh rates, and even the auto HDR feature?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's like a key part of the overall program. And we decided from day one that compatibility was critically important to the design of these next-gen consoles. And that actually influenced, some of the design decisions we made with the chip itself and with the architecture on the hardware side. And we've spent hundreds of thousands of hours testing, the thousands of games that run on Xbox One. Not only do we want them to play on the Xbox Series X and Series S, but we want them to play better than you've ever seen them before. So when a game's running in backwards compatibility on the Xbox Series X or Series S, they're running at the full fidelity of the actual hardware. So you're running with an unlocked CPU, you're running with an unlocked GPU, you're running with the full memory and the I/O bandwidth. And what that means is, you're going to see massive improvements in load times, as an example. Also, for games that maybe, occasionally miss a frame here or there, like you're going to see them running at rock solid frame rates, exactly how the developer targeted. And then for games that have things like unlocked frame rates or dynamic resolution scaling, we're delivering it at such a level of power beyond what the original consoles the games were designed for, that the games are always going to be running at their peak performance, at their maximum frame rate, at their highest resolution. And then, with the backwards compatibility team, they continue to advance the state of the art as to, how do we preserve these games and how do we enhance these games even further than what they were originally designed for. And I think we developed a lot of really cool techniques with the Xbox One X, where we could take a game that was originally, say, designed for 720p or even 480p in the case of original Xbox games, and we're able to get those to actually run at 4K. And the games look and play better than you've ever seen them before. You mentioned auto HDR as an example. There's tons of games that, Geometry Wars is one of my personal favorites, where it's like you just look at that game and it's like, man, if HDR existed when this game was created, like they would have really blown this out. Well, we can actually do that at the platform layer. And we do it in such a way that it takes no CPU, no GPU, or no memory resources. So for all intents and purposes, it's free for the game. And now I'm playing Geometry Wars better than it's ever been before. Or a game like Lost Odyssey or Rise Son of Rome. They just look and play that much better. And then we're also looking at new ways to enhance titles even further. I believe it was a week or two ago, we showed a blog post of where we have Fallout 4 running at double the frame rate that it was originally written for. Now, some of these techniques will only apply to a handful of games, just because it's critically important to us that we always respect the original intent of the creator. But if we can make the game look or play or run better than you've ever seen it before, that's what really excites the back compat team, and we're really excited by some of the early results we've seen.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like you brought up Fallout 4, that was extremely impressive, and I just feel like it's going to re-energize some of these older games that we loved maybe a decade ago, and basically bring them, to modern times. And like you said, enable higher frame rates. And I think the auto HDR feature is going to be fantastic. So we're going to be able to actually view these games, in a completely different light now. Final question, because we're running out of time. The Zoom call is literally about the end. Accessories. So the new Xbox Series controller, I don't know the exact moniker, but it's fantastic. I love how it has borrowed some of the features from the Elite controller. But it brings up a question that I was thinking of yesterday, because I have my old Xbox One media remote. Absolutely works on the Series X, no problem at all. But what about the other way? Will these new accessories actually work on the Xbox One? Is there forward and backwards compatibility there?
Absolutely. As an example, I use the new Xbox wireless controller on my Xbox One X and my Xbox One S, and vice versa. I really love my Elite Series 2. That's my primary controller on my Xbox Series X. And then, it's really just about respecting people's investments in our ecosystem. If you went out and bought a high-end steering wheel, fight stick, flight stick, just because you buy a new generation of consoles, you shouldn't have to go out and buy a whole new set of accessories. even like you were mentioning with the media remote, that was critically important to us. So like I said before, when we really committed to backwards compatibility with this generation, it wasn't just the games. It also includes your accessories. It also includes all your progression, all your game save states. Like one of the most magical moments that I had when I was playing on the Xbox Series X earlier this year is I picked up a game that I hadn't played in probably 6 or 7 years. And then I launched the game. It instantly dropped me in. It had auto HDR applied. And then my game save from like 6 or 7 years ago was instantly available to me. And it just naturally transported me back into that experience. So it's really about making it as easy as possible for players to move to the next generation when they choose to. And we also recognize that some people will continue to play on Xbox One, even if they buy, say, a Series X or a Series S. So we want to make that as seamless as possible and really put the player at the center of what we're doing and not lock things to one device or another.
This is fantastic. So, Jason, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule as we lead up to the launch of the Series X and S to talk to me just about the hardware. It's coming from a PC gamer perspective, being able these past few weeks to play on the Series X. I mean, you're absolutely doing some next generation stuff, and just the future outlook for game development and where I think this architecture is going to take games is going to be amazing. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
And thank you guys very much, and really appreciate everything that you guys do for the community. We're all gamers, and we're just really excited about what we're on track to deliver in just a couple of weeks. And we can't wait for everybody across the community to get their hands on what I've been able to experience and what you guys have been able to experience. We're really excited for November 10th.
Absolutely. So again, thank you very much, and really looking forward to launch.
Cool. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.
Send us your feedback or questions. Give us a call at 786-273-7GTR. Email us at fanmail@gamertagradio.com or leave a message on speakpipe.com/gamertagradio. Thanks for listening to Gamertag Radio. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.